built by hand. Through the storm, through the fall, we still stand, one and all. From the past to what's ahead, every word and tears we've shed tells a story that never ends through the eyes of the American lens. Yeah, through the eyes of the American lens.
Welcome to the American Lens podcast, where truth, history, and perspective come into focus. I am your host, Jason Ross. And when headlines scream louder than reason, and emotions often drown out the truth, we are here to take a step back and look through a different type of lens. One grounded in history, contents, and a little bit more common sense, which common sense isn't really all that common these days. There should be kind of a new term for it, but it's a different story. For a different topic for a different day. Speak about topics. Today's topic is truth in the age of outrage, where we live in an era where outrage has become entertainment. Isn't that kind of weird? Facts aren't debated. They're pretty much weaponized, and which is, un-American, but people no longer seek understanding. They seek validation. And actually, that's not all they seek. They do seek that, but they shout out at you, and they want to be heard. They don't want to, but they refuse to listen. And people have it in their minds where, if I shout the loudest, that means I'm right the more. No, not really. In fact, very rarely does that ever occur. The ones that speak clearly and I don't want to say effortlessly, but the ones that speak calmly and don't result in name calling and swearing and flipping the bird and all that other good stuff, usually to win the argument on that one. Let's see. But here on American Lens, we're not afraid to question the narrative. And believe me, the narrative needs to be questioned a lot. In fact, I question there really shouldn't be a narrative. We challenge assumptions, and we remember that history did not start last week. And when, I'm pretty sure a lot of you had history teachers or even heard the old saying, for those who don't learn history, you're doomed to repeat it. Well, that's true, but history does repeat itself whether you learn it or not. And I'm even going to show you that history does repeat itself quite often. And that just brings us to our main subject: truth versus outrage. Every generation has a moral passing. The Salem witch trials to the Red Scare and everything in between, and even stuff afterwards. The difference between, let's say, the 1800 election, which if you think today's media is really bad and full of outrageousness and, lack of a better term, slander and uh, lies on both ends. I'm not pointing to the fingers just at one or the other. The 1800 election was far worse than anything that we are experiencing today. Um, the difference is speed. Um, Back then, you only had as fast as the newspapers can print. Um, Now, there's an old saying: um, the lie travels 5 times around the world while the truth is still putting on its pants. And that's pretty much an accurate statement. The truth, I mean, eventually it does come out, sure. Um, but the 1800 election was far worse than now, as far as slander and just the rhetoric and the total um, blatant um, truth seeking. Um, One side would blame the other side and vice versa, and the lies and then this, that, and the other thing. In fact, it was so bad that the two people running for the presidency, you had John Adams and his vice president, Thomas Jefferson, who were from two different parties at the time. Um, Adams was a member of the Federalist Party, and Jefferson was the Democratic Republican Party, and they were really good friends. In fact, they wrote the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence together. Um, just so you know that it may have been written by Thomas Jefferson, but not every single word was Jefferson's. There was actually a committee of 5 people, and 5 people had their say in what went on in there before we actually went to the Continental Congress. Um, but the big three were Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, and Benjamin Franklin. And um, but because of the media at the time, which was just consisting of newspapers, you had Federalist newspapers and Democratic Republican newspapers, basically bashing one another or bashing the head of each party. Um, Both Adams and Jefferson took it as well. Jefferson must be, you know, telling the newspapers this, and Adams must be telling the newspapers that, and it really wasn't all that the case. Um, but not often. And it got to the point where it deeply eroded their friendship so bad that they actually, when Jefferson wound up winning the 1800 election, uh, Jefferson just went home. He did not go to the inauguration, which was the very first time a president got inaugurated at the Capitol building, and he just decided to go home. He had enough, and they didn't speak to each other until years later, after Abigail Adams had passed away in 1818. And at some point after that, they court, never having actually met in person. Um, for years. As soon as Adams left Washington, that was the last time um, um, they had seen each other in person. Then they wind up corresponding through letters, and then kind of rekindling that friendship again. Ultimately, dying on the same day, 50 years to the day of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, on July 4th, 1826, 50 years later, which is kind of a little odd twist in history. One of those little fun fact historical things that I love so much. Um, So the difference is that we have the internet that can just pump out stuff real quick. We got 24-hour news cycles, which was, you know, something that's only been happening for the past 30 years. Give or take. You know, which causes the outrage in to spread faster than actual facts. You know, the rhetoric and propaganda and this, that, and the other thing just gets pumped out faster and faster and faster, while the truth, gets buried. Um, Truth always does come out, though. I can tell you that truth always does come out. Um, Social media rewards emotions, um, reactions, and irrational thinking. And we don't ask anymore, is this true? I mean, how many times have you said, oh, if it's on the internet, it must be true? Well, a lot of people actually kind of believe that. Yes, I know. I can see the irony in it that you're watching me on the internet and I'm speaking about truth. I see the irony in that. Yeah. Um, but I'm not actually here telling you this is true. This is true. I'm actually telling you that you come up with your own conclusions. Do your own critical thinking. That the one thing I want everybody to take away from this program, every show, is you come up with your own conclusions. You do your own critical thinking. You do your own due diligence and fact check me. Like, I don't care about fact checkers to begin with. I think they're not who they say who they are. Um, you do your own fact checking, not a paid for bureaucratic branch of some company. You do your own fact checking when it comes to not just what I say, but every time you say, even if somebody you like, you see a politician or another podcaster or another person on the news, even if you like them, I still say question them and do your own due diligence. That's uh, that's how critical thinking works. But the truth isn't that tribal. It doesn't it doesn't wear a red hat or a blue tie. You know, it's often uncomfortable. Um, when you talk truth, it shouldn't be in someone's comfort zone. The person who's telling the truth and the person who is listening to the truth, it shouldn't be made comfortable, but it should be made to be understood and debated and reasoned with. And that what makes it worth de- defending. Um, as Americans, we forget how to disagree without just dehumanizing someone. And you see it all the time on the news and on social media, and you know, somebody walks down the street with a MAGA hat on, and already they're a Nazi, or somebody who is supporting you know, you know Camilla Harris, and they're a socialist. It's we can't be like that. Is That's not how rational thinking works. Let somebody, as an American, as our values, as our way of life here, you have the right to follow MAGA, or you have the right to support whoever it is that you want to support. You don't have the right to uh sorry, excuse me. You don't have the right to be vile, disgusting, and rude, mean, or like I just said, dehumanizing somebody because they disagree with you politically, spiritually, or any of that nature. And as an Americans, we are supposed to accept, according to the Bill of Rights, you have the right to do that. You even have the right to be an a-hole if that's what you choose. You just don't have the right to put your hands on somebody. You don't have the right to verbally abuse somebody, no matter how badly you disagree with them. Uh, that's not. And on top of that, if you are going to, if you want somebody to respect your opinion, respect how you, um, what you think, then you should show the same respect uh, on the other side to somebody else that disagrees with you or you disagree with. Um, that I don't know if you remember back in school, we always had the golden rule. I don't know if they teach that or not. Actually, I have to go look that up. They teach the golden rule. Do unto others as you want done unto you, which basically means if you want to be treated with kindness and respect, then you show kindness and respect, even if it's to people that you disagree with. That's the only way um, we can actually, I don't want to say heal as a country, but that's how we get back on track on being a to where we were as a country. Our founding fathers argued fiercely, but they built something lasting because their debates were rooted in an idea and they weren't rooted in outrage um, uh, or hatred, basically, for because somebody just disagreed with somebody else. There were moments. Don't get me wrong. There were moments on the floor of the House and the Senate. Where um, it was one instance where one person took his cane and bludgeoned somebody almost to death. He survived and went back to Congress when his wounds were healed, and nothing really happened to the other guy. But yes, that actually coming to blows actually happened, and of course that's wrong. And this was going back pre-Civil War, so this is actually going back, I think, to the 1840s, 1850s. Off the top of my head, I think. Um, but I just lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. But yeah, that actually happened. They were came to blows because people disagree with each other. It's not how we're supposed to act, and you're kind of seeing that today. No physical blows yet, but I've seen a lot of stuff that are very unprofessional on both sides have done it. Name calling and ridiculing and just and that trickles on down. We see that in like, oh look, our elected officials are treating each other that way, then we should treat each other that way, and that's just wrong. Um, that is very very wrong. Um, when outrage replaces truth, freedom becomes frail, and because once emotion rules, reason dies. And when that happens, uh, liberty will soon follow. And, we really can't do that. We can't lose our liberties, or our rights and freedoms. That's who we made. That's who we are. That's America right there. And once we lose that, it's hard, really, really hard. A long, hard road out of hell to get all those back. So, that moving on to our next segment, through the lens of history. History has plenty of to teach us about outrageous culture. Um, in 1778, I'm sorry, in 1798, we had the Alien and Seduction Act. Now, it was actually two separate bills, but they kind of merged into one, a practice that we're still doing today. So I'm going to exclude the alien part of the Alien and Sedition Act, and just focus on the sedition. And all that basically is journalists or anybody who badmouthed the government was thrown in jail, and basically it is unconstitutional. It does go against the First Amendment, right? And I do disagree with the sedition part. And the reason why I'm kind of bringing this up is because it has been in the past couple of months, kind of brought back into light. People probably like heard about it in the news and whatnot, but it's coming back a little bit, and that's not. I understand the point of the Sedition Act. However, I mean, you do have a point where, okay, so basically the sedition aspect of it was, at the time the bill was written, it was under the Adams administration. Adams was only president for 4 years. He was a two-time vice president, one-time president. You had George Washington, who only did 2 years, and he decided he had enough, and that was it. And then when Adams became president, now what's that? 8 years, so less than 12 years. Less than 12 years, our country was a country. So bad mouthing the government was such a young and frail um, country at the time. I can understand why we needed something like that, because people's minds would change, and it was feared that people would kind of root back to the time before the Revolutionary War. Was only 10 years prior to that, 10 to 20, I'm sorry, 20 years prior to that. And um, so I understand the method, I understand the meaning behind it. However, it is against the it goes against the First Amendment, freedom of speech. Now, could you threaten the government? No. Could you threaten members of the government? No. That threatening somebody does not fall under the First Amendment right. You cannot threaten somebody with physical violence, harm, um, slander, or any of that nature. You could sit there all day long and says, I can't stand this person and F that person. That's fine. But saying things like, oh, I hope somebody shoots X, Y, and Z, or, I hope this person drops dead. You can't say things like that. You can't. That is not protected under the First Amendment, right? And if you get thrown in jail or lose your job or get kicked out of school, I'm sorry. I'm not. I have no sympathy for that. If you badmouth the government because you don't like the way it is, you don't like, even if I disagree with how you're saying it, yeah, you have the right to protest. That's a form of protest, in my opinion. So yes, you do have the right to do that. But because there was fear and anger it was easy. It was easier to do to shelter people from that than practice liberty. Um, in 1850s, I'm sorry, in the 1950s, you had McCarthyism, and now I'm gonna say I agree with McCarthyism to a point. Um, we should not have communism, socialism, and any other types of forms of Marxism in this country. If you are a proponent of those types of ideology, okay, you practice it in your own home, or maybe you would feel more comfortable moving to a country that already has that ideology. However, in my opinion, you don't have the right to alter the ideology of this country that people have fought very hard and lost and sacrificed their lives over to bring forth an ideology that is responsible for misery, starvation, death, every single place that it's gone. There's no exception. There's none that you can point to a country where it worked, where and I don't want to hear, well, they weren't doing it right. No, that's exactly what they were doing right. And for people like Bernie Sanders, AOC, and this new guy Mandani, I can understand why they're for it, because they're the ones that are going to benefit from them, because they're the ones in government. Those type of ideologies, government benefits. The people who suffer are you, the one sitting at home, the one that has to go to work, the one that actually, flips the bill for everything. You are the ones that are going to be miserable. You are the ones that are going to be starving. And I'm going to be part of that too if it ever comes here. The government, you're basically handing over your rights, your freedoms, your money, all to the government. And it's the same government that you're protesting against. When you protest Donald Trump, it's the same government that Biden was a member of, or Obama was a member of. It's the same government. You have different leaders because that's how we remained free. We don't have lifelong. Actually, I understand that we have members of Congress, and I'm a big term limit person. I think there should be term limits on everybody from a local level all the way on up. But again, that's a different topic for a different day. But going back to McCarthyism, you know, pointing out who was a communist, especially during the time when you had the Red Scare, where the Russians had the nukes, and the fear of communism was running rapid. And the media was guilty of it. But McCarthy, what what it represented, I believe, because we shouldn't have that here in America, because it goes against our Constitution, it goes against our way of life. But the way he did it, the way he went around about it, the way that pointing the fingers at people, having other people pointing the fingers at other people, accusing people of communists who weren't communists, having decent Americans spying on their neighbors, and people seeing communists around every corner and stuff like that. It kind of reminded me of during COVID, when the government was telling people to spy on their neighbors. Are they doing something that went against COVID guidelines? And stuff like that. Which is wrong. The government shouldn't be doing that. So I believe in the theory of McCarthyism. I just don't believe in the way it was handled. That went against our way of life and stuff like that. Same thing with the Salem witch trials. You could point back, so things do repeat because you had people pointing the fingers at other people, saying, "Oh, this person's a witch," versus this person's a communist. Now, granted, we weren't burning communists at the stake or drowning them in doing other sadistic stuff to them like they did in the Salem witch trials, but pointing the fingers and accusing people who weren't real communists, and even the people that were real communists, really didn't get the due process that they did deserve. Moving on. You know, yeah, it was as a popular. It was not because it was popular. It's because it was no, sorry. He McCarthyism did ruin lives that didn't deserve it. Um, under the banner of patriotism. Now, patriotism, just like everything else, can be abused. Yeah, I'm all for patriotism. I'm a patriot at heart. Um, I do wave my American flag as much as possible. But calling other people un-American when they're really not is wrong. Um, and yet, in each of these cases, the truth eventually did prevail. I mean, we did learn that not everybody who was accused of being a communist was a communist. Not everybody who was accused of being a witch was a witch, etc., etc. Not because it was popular, but because it was persistent. Our republic has always faced moments of anger, of moments when anger outpaced wisdom and rationality. Every time somebody had an out, um, every but every time someone had the courage to say, "Wait, let's take a moment to breathe and let's look at things closer." Um, that's what it. That's what this show is about. To tell you what to think. Sorry, to tell you not what to think, but how to think. To remind you that thinking is your birthright, and we need critical thinking. We need people to question authority, question, why are you saying this? Why is this being done this way? And why is this that? Not just oh, I like this person, I voted for this person, so oh, I watch this network, and I believe everything everybody says, because we need to stop being very gullible in this day and age. But this brings us to the Badass American of the Week, one of my favorite subjects, where we pick a badass American from any point from America's history to today, and we just kind of like give them a little bit of a highlight. And this week, our American badass is Christopher Kit Carson, who was an American pioneer and frontiersman. He was a soldier, a scout who embodied courage and true American grit. Carson wasn't perfect. Nobody was perfect. The only person there's only one perfect person to ever roam this planet, and he roamed the planet about 2,025 years ago. Yeah, he roamed the planet about 2,000 years ago. So there's a couple of people that came very close to it. I'm not one of them, um, but neither was Kit Carson. But he did show courage and tenacity and all that true American go get 'em that has resonated through generation after generation. Uh, he made decisions that history rightly debated, and but his life reminds us that strength and virtue aren't absent of flaws. Um, God knows I'm full of them, and as you probably watch this show right now, you can see a whole bunch of flaws that just happened. Um, there, his willingness to act, um, shows, and didn't freeze shows, that's courage. Um, Carson helped chart the American uh, Carson helped chart American West. He guided expeditions through lands few dared to go to. I mean, remember, there were no roads, no trails, no planes, trains, and automobiles. Um, he made one journey that he was supposed to be 3,000 mile journey. He actually wound up going about a little more than halfway. His horse gave out real quick in the journey. He was supposed to deliver correspondence from California to Washington, D.C. Then he meets up with a cavalry unit, and then he comes back. Somebody took his message and went to Washington while he guided the cavalry unit back to California. And he didn't rest. He was tired, hungry, in a lot of pain, but he didn't complain. And he picked up his rifle and fought the battle that was going on at the time. And when people were calling him an American hero, they he came out and said, "No, I am not a hero." And basically pulled a George Washington when Washington says, "No, I'm not going to be king. I'm not going to be ruler." Well, Carson didn't want to be a hero. He didn't see himself as one, and but that's a true grit that he had. That was like why one of the reasons why he was a badass, because he did things not because he saw himself as this person, but he did things because he knew that they had to be done. He didn't look at it like, well, if I do this, I'm going to be memorialized. No, he did things because he had to be done. It had to get done, and he stood in the world where lives and where life was a code. A man of his word. That was your currency in the West. He grew up. Excuse me. He grew up in the West, in the wilderness, in the frontier. There were no cities, no towns, no villages. He was orphaned at a very young age, and he basically grew up in certain Indian tribes. And even though he fought Indians, he also had major respect for them as well. But he showed those courage rooted in conviction. But Kit Carson, if you want to know more about Kit Carson, please do your due diligence and look him up. He's worth looking, taking a little bit of time to look up and see. And if you have somebody who you want to nominate as American badass, whether it's a historical figure, an American historical figure, doesn't have to be. He didn't have to be somebody that doesn't have to be born here, but had an impact on on America, then please feel free to contact me. And but if you're going to nominate, let's say, your Uncle Joe Schmo, who did X, Y, and Z, this is why, we'll make sure that you present facts and a way for me to verify those facts. Otherwise, I can't. If I can't verify this person as being a true badass, then I can't go on the air and state it. So if you're going to nominate somebody, you have to present real hardcore facts. And you can email me at the American Lens Podcast at gmail.com with your nominations, or basically anything that you choose, as long as it's respectful. So in closing, so how will we find the truth in an age that rewards outrage? By slowing down, by listening before we react, by seeking content before judgment, by embracing the freedoms of thought, meaning nothing if we surrender to the mob. Truth isn't found in the loudest voices. It's found in the quietest persistence of those who refuse to bend. The American story has always been one of redemption through reasons and courage, through consequences. We don't have to agree on everything, but we should agree that truth still matters. And I'll leave you with this. A verse, a Bible verse, John 8:32. Ye shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free. I hope you enjoyed this episode of American Lens Podcast. Join me for our next episode, whenever that is. And I promise it'll get a little bit more easier, and I'll be, as soon as I get more comfortable doing this. I promise. I am your host, Jason Ross. This has been the American Lens Podcast, where truth, history, and perspective come into focus. Until next time, take care of yourself and others.